This is the Clean Energy Show.
Hello and welcome to episode 74 of the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
And I'll be damned if I'm not James Whittingham. This week, Nikola Motors founder charged with fraud. Tesla announces AI Day. The courier company DHL will use electric cargo planes, and the Nissan LEAF is now, for 2022, priced under $20,000 in the United States. Crazy, but perhaps all it's worth. Brian, how are you this midsummer afternoon?
Yeah, I'm great. What have you been up to this week?
Nothing. I've been floating in the pool. We've been having an extended heat wave here. Accompanied by smoke. I'm never sure if it's cloudy or smoky. Do you know? Can you tell the difference?
I think it's both, but yeah, I walked into work yesterday. It's about a 15-minute walk to the university, and I had labored breathing by the time I got there. This forest fire smoke is really bad. I felt really short of breath, and I was indoors for about an hour and a half at the university before I started to feel normal again. Mm-hmm. And then, eventually walked home and had the exact same experience. Like I felt like a little bit lightheaded, like there's a real lack of oxygen in the air, pressed out by all of that forest fire smoke here in Canada.
Well, the good news is now you know what it's like to be me on a good day. So I fell off the chiropractor table last week, as you'll recall, and I'm scared to go back. I'm frightened to go back. Amazon lost a package. They've actually, I order a ton, and this is nothing to brag about, but I order a ton of stuff from Amazon because A, I'm cheap, and B, I like exotic things that you can't get in our small-ish city, medium-sized city, we'll call it, for world purposes, and they actually lost a package. This is the first time this happened in several years of me ordering all my worldly possessions of wealth on Amazon. And it was a bike light, though, so it's kind of related because it was for my e-bike. It was so hot here that I decided I better start biking at night or something.
Yeah.
I'm not a morning person. I want to be a morning person, but I'm not.
So was this like a porch pirate situation where somebody stole it, or?
No, they knew that it was not delivered. It was kind of hilarious because the new Amazon company takes two pictures. It seems extreme, but they'll take a picture of your mailbox and a picture of your house to show they got the right house.
Yeah.
And when I was out at the lake, I could tell my son didn't mow the lawn like he said he was going to. So that bastard, he tried to cheat me out of a lawn mow. So we're speaking of lawns, my wife decided we needed a good lawn this year because we had company streaming in. And what a year to try and make a good lawn, finally.
Yeah, just so blisteringly hot with no rain.
Not a drop. I mean, we literally had a drop yesterday, and I looked at my deck, and it was wet. I looked at the street. It was dry because the street, it just evaporated. It didn't even bother sitting there for 10 seconds. So,
and the other thing I've noticed is like the streets and the sidewalks are kind of wet looking with tree sap, and I'm assuming that's because it's been so hot. The trees have been shedding more sap or something, and my cars are all covered with tree sap. Do you know anything about that?
No, I don't. If any of our listeners do, get a hold of us, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com.
Even my mailbox is covered in tree sap, and
Really?
I looked up, and there's no trees directly above it. There's just tree sap everywhere.
Huh. That's weird. Perhaps it's end of days. Perhaps the world is now over, Brian. Maybe we've broken it into here first.
That seems to be a general topic every week here on the show.
Speaking of bicycles, my neighbor Bob had a heart attack on his bicycle.
Oh, no.
He was riding in our city's Wascana Park, and this is a few weeks ago now, and he's, I want to say, late 60s, 70 maybe. This is a guy who went to the YMCA every weekday and swam and did things. I know that because the local news did a story on the Y, and I saw him walking grumpily in the background away with a swimsuit on.
Yeah.
So I know what he does. He got caught at a news story, and now I know.
So, but he's in shape is what you're saying.
He tried to take care of himself for his age. He is a very grumpy, he gets angry at City Hall type things, angry old man, get off my lawn type things. But he was riding his bike without a helmet and just collapsed in the park and scraped his head half off because he wasn't wearing a helmet. Not that that was his biggest problem, because his heart had literally stopped, and he had coded 3 times, and he was saved by a passerby. So I encourage everyone to get CPR training if you can. I do not have it. Do you? Have you ever had it?
No, I've never had CPR training, but, hopefully somebody in my household knows.
That's the important thing, is to get the people around you to know it. It's not whether you do it. It's us as the aging males of the population here. We need to get other people surrounding us.
So that reminds me of a news story I wasn't going to talk about this week, but there was some footage from police in Norway, because they were able to pull over. Well, there was a guy who fell asleep at the wheel of a Tesla, and it was on autopilot. And what happens when that happens is, the car just eventually slowly pulls over, and the Norwegian police got some, or it might have been Sweden, I don't know, but they got some. What's
the difference, Brian? I'm kidding. Norway and Sweden, we know the difference.
I mean, I am part Norwegian and I'm part Swedish, and yeah, you're right. I don't know the difference, but I am.
So there's no difference. They're just all Stocktons over there.
Sure, it's the far north, but so in a future with autonomous vehicles, which we talk about frequently, that's the best possible result. Is if you fall asleep at the wheel, your car gently pulls you over to the side of the road, and that's what happened. And sort of made the news because somebody got some good video of it.
Oh, really? That's interesting. It happens more than probably people think, and it seemed people don't have heart attacks like Elvis did on the toilet necessarily.
Yeah,
they're often driving, and we unfortunately knew a person who passed away, you and I, a few years ago, who was driving. So
it sounds like he was able to pull over to the side of the road, but then that was it for him.
Yeah. But just as driving is one of our daily activities, and I guess it's bound to happen. I don't think my neighbor was exerting himself riding his bike, but, just probably a really good place to happen is in a public park where there's other fit people who are maybe conscious and no CPR. I don't know. Not in a hospital.
Yeah, no, it's true. Other people will see you there. I have an update about my e-bike.
Oh.
I told you last week how I'm a genius and I repaired my e-bike.
Well, genius was implied. You didn't come out and say it, but yes.
But I opened up the battery. I figured out that there was a wire that needed to be connected. I borrowed a soldering iron. Anyway, I've discovered that it really only works intermittently.
Oh, for F's sakes.
I thought, while I got it connected, I got it put back together. The light turned on. I thought it was working, but in fact, when you ride the bike, it's just intermittent. It works for a while, then it shuts itself down. Works for a while, shuts itself down. So, I don't know. So, I borrowed a soldering iron from Sunny. Do you have one that's like a nice fine tip? I think I need a more precise soldering iron.
Well, she has a blunt instrument, does she?
It's a bit more of a blunt
airplane instrument or something?
It's a bit more of a blunt soldering iron.
I have your typical soldering irons, your Radio Shack specials, your... I think I think they're all the same. I've never had one that wasn't like the ones that I have.
Yeah, it's like a pen tip.
Kind of, yeah. What is this one like?
It was just a little bit fatter than that. It had kind of a fat end to it.
Okay. Some serious soldering going on there.
Yeah, so I might need to borrow a soldering iron from you.
Well, I'll have to dig one up. I'm trying to think where I have one. It's been so long since I've used a soldering iron. You know what I did use the other day? And I can't say enough about this. I just discovered this about a year and a half ago. Is liquid electrical tape. That is to say, a little jar of liquid electrical tape. You pull the lid off, and it's got a little brush on it, and you brush on this black. It's like melted electrical tape, and you let it dry. And
okay.
I've done some landscape lighting outside, and I've had some breaks, and I just painted it on. It does take a long time to dry, but outside it dries fairly quickly.
Well, that answers exactly what I was wondering, because when I first opened up this battery to try and fix it, there was this black goo around. So I didn't know what that was, but it sounds like it was all soldered together, and then there was this black goo everywhere, which I guess is liquid electrical tape.
I guess so. I found it by accident while searching a hardware website once, and I thought, I have to have that. And sure enough, it is wonderful
stuff. Well, I'll add that to my order because I'd like to borrow that too. I need a few drops of that.
Okay, that might be really hard to get in there. Although, I suppose if you took like an old paintbrush, like an artistic watercolor brush or something, and just dabbed a little bit on the end, or had something long and thin to just stick in there, but the brush will be short and fat on this. But yeah, it is possible.
Okay,
that I know where it is. I'll have to dig for the soldering iron. Anyway, yeah. So the heat wave looks like it's going to be over, Brian, and we'll get back to the normal things. And summer is moving by fast. We're continuing with the podcast. And you haven't been e-biking. I'm very sad to hear that.
Yeah, well, I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and I don't have a light for my e-bike. So what do you want to start with first, Brian? What should we begin the show with this week?
How about the Nissan LEAF?
All right. That just came out this morning. So the 2022 version of the Nissan LEAF, which is starting to hit U.S. stores, I checked, it's not here in Canada, is after the federal tax rebate, which they claim is still available, would bring it just under $20,000 in the United States. What do you think about that?
Yeah, this is a big deal. This is what a lot of people are really waiting for is, the promise of electric vehicles is that they will get cheaper. And but it always seems to happen really slowly. But, with the help of this is the original U.S. federal tax credit that's been going on for a few years now. Tesla and GM no longer qualify because they sold too many. Now, there's another potential tax credit in the works, so something may replace this. But Nissan, because they haven't sold enough of them yet, they still qualify. It's a $7,500 tax rebate. And they've also dropped the price. So, yeah, starting at under $20,000 for an electric car. This is the sort of shorter range version with a kind of a small battery. But still, that's a big deal to hit that barrier.
That's the 40 kilowatt hour battery. I have a 2013 Nissan LEAF with a 24 kilowatt battery. Probably 20 of it still exists after that time. The Nissan LEAF is known for not having active cooling, so it's not great for warmer climates necessarily. It does overheat on the highway. It doesn't charge very fast on the highway, and has a short range. This is a city car, Brian Stockton, and I love my LEAF. And if I was wealthy and wanting to buy a city car, I would have no hesitation to run out and get a $20,000 U.S. LEAF and be quite happy with it. Very happy with it.
And I will mention that the one with the bigger battery starts at only $5,000 more dollars. So we're talking about $25,000 after the tax credit to get into the 62 kilowatt hour battery pack, which is up around the sort of 400 kilometer range.
Yeah, 225 miles, 363 kilometers, which
still kind of a city car.
And given the way that the battery works on that, it wouldn't be great in a cold climate, at least. It would be fine for a city. It'll be fine for a city. If you're commuting from a bedroom community or you've got like a 80 kilometer commute or a 100 kilometer commute, it gets dicey when it gets cold in some places maybe, or you'd have to charge at work or something like that. But yeah, I love the LEAF. I don't love certain aspects of it. The new LEAF is basically the same as my LEAF, except it's got different exterior styling. I think the base model does come with a few more features like cruise control, which I like, even in the city. So,
yeah, of course, Nissan was out way ahead of the pack with the Nissan LEAF. It's been around for, over 10 years now?
Yeah, well, in 2010, it was the first model year, I believe, 2010 is when they came out with the 2011 model year. They came out with 2 years, and they started building them in the UK and in Tennessee. And mine comes from Tennessee, and it's a 13 model, but it's a bit early for the 13 because they didn't kind of have things worked out with the battery chemistry, so I have a weaker than normal battery. But mine is still pretty good. I think my LEAF will last me longer than I will. I think that it'll outlast me. It's still going strong and serving my purpose as our second car in the family. I'm still struggling, though, to figure out what are we going to get for a car next spring when we have to give in our lease on our Prius. Will Toyota have a new EV by then? Will they have it in stores? Will they have enough of them? You still can't buy a RAV4 in Canada. It's hard to get, the RAV4 Prime, rather. That starts at 45,000 Canadian, 40 after our federal tax credit here. Great car, but it is a gas and hybrid version, and I'm done with hybrids. I don't need the hybrid part. I don't want the hybrid part. I want electric.
Yeah, well, on the sort of lower end, on the used end, yeah, you'd probably be looking at another Leaf or maybe the Chevy Bolt or something, maybe a used Hyundai Kona EV, things like that.
None of them are going to do well on the highway, though.
Yeah.
And I don't, we kind of want one for the highway because we have a kid in Saskatoon about 2.5 hours away going to university next year. So we see a lot of trips there, and our Prius hybrid is good for that. It's with gas prices going up, it's doing well. But I would really like an electric car to get me there.
It would be great to do that electric. And of course, I'd do that drive to Saskatoon, but there's a Tesla supercharger in Davidson that I use, but there's no other third-party chargers yet on that route. So you could do it with a Bolt if there was a charger in Davidson, I think, but there isn't.
Well, Brian, did you see the video that the CEO of Rivian, the electric adventure truck maker, that everyone's really excited about, released? Did you see the video of it going up a 45% incline?
Yeah, there was a really impressive little off-road clip of this electric pickup truck going up this, sheer cliff, it looked like.
This is some sound impressive from it. That's going over a rock surface. It looks like it's practically straight up, Brian.
Yeah,
Each of the wheels are being controlled by a computer. They have instant torque to the wheels from, unlike a combustion engine, you have this advantage. It was mind-blowing. I didn't think it was even possible, and frankly, it was scary because it looked like somebody would fall to their death if it didn't work out. And they were using the stock wheels and the stock tires and everything.
And helps that the battery is in the floor, which is where a lot of the weight is, which would help it from, I guess, falling over backwards trying to go up that cliff.
Yes. Very, very impressive. And Rivian has got new money coming into it, billions of dollars. They're talking about a second U.S. factory now and one in Europe. I mean, this is just for a company that has two models of car. However, Amazon has put an order in with them and has invested in them to have 100,000 delivery vans by 2030 out of them. That's going to start pretty soon. So there is different configurations for their platform. For the basic chassis of the vehicle can be changed to a very good delivery system for couriers.
But if you think about the potential market that's available here, like the reason they're talking so big, like 2 U.S. factories, 1 in Europe, is we're still only at, roughly 2% market share for electric vehicles. So the amount of money that's about to be made, if you believe, like we do, that, everything will be pure electric by at least 2030, perhaps sooner, the amount of money is mind-boggling.
This short-haul delivery segment is crazy. And I'll tell you why. It's because a lot of cities in the world are banning combustion vehicles, or they're charging a fee, just to get into the inner part of the city now, like London. And other people are doing that as well. If you want to be on top of that and you want to drive and deliver your packages and get your goods moved around, you're going to have to be electric. So to be ahead of the game is a good idea. And I think I know other companies are doing it too. Lots of other companies are doing it, but there is a huge, that's going to be something that is going to happen fast because it's not a consumer. It's not where am I going to charge? And they're too expensive. The companies will look at the spreadsheet and they'll say, this is going to save us money on gas, on fees. It's going to be a good look for the company. And, speaking of that, Brian, if you don't mind, I want to transition into electric airplanes for a second because the company DHL, which is a big courier company, usually I associate DHL with big things. Do you associate them with big things? Like if I wanted a piece of furniture delivered, I think it would come by DHL. But
I'm not sure. I think I've gotten small things from them,
really?
But go ahead.
Oh, okay. I've only had a couple of things from DHL, but I will say this, DHL, you didn't lose it like Amazon did, okay? If I got my bike light from DHL, they wouldn't have lost it. DHL's partnering with Eviation. That's not aviation, that's Eviation. Just today announced a pretty big moment in the developing history of electric aviation, and specifically electric cargo aviation, says Electric. Starting later this year, DHL will begin testing a fleet of 12 electric cargo planes from Eviation's sole current model. They only have one model of airplane, and it's dubbed Alice. So I don't know how many passengers there are. I think there's like 24. It's like a short-haul, small airplane. It's got two propellers at the back, not on the main wings, but at the back on the tail. And they did have a V-tail, but they switched it to a T-shaped tail, the more normal tail, for pilots to easily transition. The interesting thing about this, Brian, is that they're doing it so quickly. I think that's the main thing, that this is happening right now. This is 3 years from now, they'll be delivering in electric airplanes on a scale that's small and experimental, but it's going to be a proof of concept, and they're going to save a hell of a lot of money. They're going to be able to fly places that don't allow noisy airplanes, so it opens up new possibilities of where you can, like you could fly to a small Saskatchewan city where we live and where normal jets don't land, and you could do it quietly and economically. So, we're looking at 407 kilometers per hour. That's 220 knots. Has a 440 nautical mile range. And the battery system apparently is 8,000 pounds or something like that. It's heavy, and that's the problem with long-haul aviation. So short-haul, no problem. Their company, Eviation, is headquartered in Israel, but they just moved to Seattle with the most of the Israeli leadership still intact. Interesting also, Brian, one pilot. You only need one pilot for this plane. So you save money there too.
So if this were a normal plane, you'd need two pilots, I guess?
For some reason you would. The same size planes require two pilots. There's just less to do. So I think, it's like a car. You just push down the pedal and go. There's not a throttle. There's not a oxygen mixture setting. And if I were a pilot, and I'm not, but if I were, I think I would like to fly one of these suckers. Maybe this will be my next job, Brian, or my only job.
Yeah.
I'll be flying DHL cargo electric planes. I would feel comfortable. I'm an aviation geek. I watch aviation videos on YouTube, particularly bad ones when people run into, you listen to air traffic control recordings of things that go wrong. And not everybody dies in them, but it does happen sometimes. But, I'm listening to people in their airplanes and their engine quits. And you can hear the engine.
Yeah.
And they're not happy. It's a bad thing when your engine quits. Or it's spewing oil into your windshield and you can't see anything. Not in an electric plane, no, sir. In an electric plane, you will not have that problem.
Well, there's a famous story of a Canadian airliner, like a big passenger jet one time that ran out of fuel, like over the Atlantic Ocean or something, and the pilot managed to glide it like a really long distance and actually get it landed. So I think, you could do a certain amount of gliding without any power, but you don't want to have to try that.
No, and that's what they do. If they have enough altitude, you can glide a long way. If you don't have your altitude, it's a shorter playing field before death. Yeah. As we say in the aviation world, keep flying the plane till the very end. Some people don't. They stop flying the plane, then they just fall out of the sky. That's called stalling. Anyway, I'm not a pilot. I'm just a podcaster. So it will require 30 minutes or less, these planes, to charge per flight hour. So if you have a 3-hour flight, it will charge in an hour and a half, I guess. So
sounds about right.
815 kilometers is the range. Generally, in airplanes, you have to have at least a half an hour of excess fuel for those situations where you're fogged in or you need an alternate or things just don't work out. So
yeah, you have to circle the airport.
Yeah, I wonder how it works if I don't think they fly as fast as other planes, but anyway, they carry 2,600 pounds of cargo, which is, you're not carrying a tank in there off to the military, but you're carrying boxes and bike lights and things like that. Your Amazon Alexas. I don't know. So I think it's cool. It looks cool, and it's frankly sooner than expected.
Yeah, that's great.
So, I understand we have an exciting edition of Brian's Movie Corner again this week.
Brian's Movie Corner.
Yeah, so this week I have what is probably the most obscure movie I've ever mentioned on Brian's Movie Corner. It's an obscure Canadian movie, which I like mostly because I've made obscure Canadian movies.
Oh, yes, so you're the king.
I'm the king, so I have
obscurity.
I have some sympathy for others who attempt to make obscure Canadian movies. I mean, I guess you don't attempt to make it obscure, but
no.
Anyway, this is a film from 2018 called When the Storm Fades, and I'm bringing it up because it does relate to climate change.
Uh-huh.
And I heard about it on a podcast called High School Sucked.
Really?
And this is a podcast out of Vancouver, and it's hosted by Darcy Michael, who is famous on TikTok.
Wow.
And they've been getting viewers for their podcast because he's famous on TikTok. So, James, we got to get on that.
What's he doing TikTok? Little dances?
Something like that. I've been meaning to follow him. I'll follow him right after the show.
You have to find out for next week's show what he does on TikTok to get podcast listeners.
So, him and Jane Stanton host this podcast. It's out of Vancouver. It's part of the kind of Vancouver comedy community that I'm a big fan of. And they had on a guest named Sean Devlin, who you probably haven't heard of, but he's semi-famous in Canada as the guy who photobombed Stephen Harper about 10 years ago with a climate change message. Like, he managed to sneak his way, like dressed as a waiter. He snuck his way on stage with Stephen Harper. This is the former Prime Minister of Canada, a conservative, somebody not particularly interested in climate change. And he managed to sneak on stage and get a photobomb the Prime Minister of Canada with this climate change message. And it was a huge story in Canada like 10, 12 years ago, and actually really affected the discussion about climate change in Canada because it was such a famous event. He was able to then go on, talk shows and speak about climate change. And shortly after that, there was like a panel on CBC radio, and it was the first time a conservative politician in Canada admitted that climate change was real, and we had to do something about it. So I'm a huge fan of Sean Devlin for that reason, and he actually managed to do it twice. He did it a couple of years later, sneak up on the Prime Minister of Canada. But he's a comedian, but is also an activist and very interested in climate change. And he talked about the movie that he made. It's called When the Storm Fades, and he has Filipino descent. His mother's from the Philippines, and so he has a real connection to the Philippines. And back in 2013 was one of the largest tropical storms ever in the Philippines. Tropical storm Yolanda, which absolutely devastated the Philippines. And it was shortly after that typhoon that, he pulled this prank on Stephen Harper, because it was, one of those kind of climate change events, like one of these extreme weather events that you can't necessarily pin directly on climate change, but, you can sort of blame it on climate change. It was just this extremely strong storm, and he had this connection to the Philippines, and he was very angry about what had happened. Of course, the developing world is much more likely to be affected negatively by climate change. And, so the Philippines has really struggled since then. So in order to kind of do more about it, he decided to make a comedy movie about the Philippines. So it's a very unusual premise, but it involves a lot of things I'm interested in, like improvisation and comedy, and, climate change activism. So I just thought it was a really interesting choice for him to kind of take this particular weird path to make a film about climate change. So there was a family in the Philippines that he knew quite well, and they'd been devastated by the typhoon. And he asked them if they'd be interested in being in a movie playing themselves, and they said yes. And then he added a couple of improv comedians from Vancouver to come and play the sort of bumbling Westerners that are there to kind of save the day, to be the saviors for the Philippines. And of course, it's been a nonstop comedy of errors since this typhoon. People have been trying to help, but the money often goes in the wrong places. It's been a disaster all around. So that's kind of what this movie is about. The well-meaning Canadians heading to the Philippines, but they did all improvised. It's a beautiful looking film. It's shot documentary style, but the cinematography is amazing. There's a scene with fireflies in it, which is very difficult to film.
Yeah. Wow.
Because I tried filming fireflies out at the cottage one time, and it's very difficult because you need super sensitive cameras.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so I think we have a nice little clip here that kind of sets up the movie well.
What are you working on?
I was just gonna post a photo of Arnell, but I can't decide between these two photos. I like this one because he looks happy, and then this one, he's got a hammer, which I like because it shows his commitment to the project and what we're doing, but it doesn't look as happy as the other one.
Yeah, he really looks like he doesn't want to be there, eh?
It was hot.
Yeah.
Everyone was not happy.
You look nice, though. You look really happy in that picture.
Yeah, but it's not about me. It's about him.
So that's the two Canadians talking about the social media post that they're trying to do. So I would only recommend this movie if you are more adventurous in your movie takes. It's pretty subtle. Like it's a comedy, but it's an extremely subtle comedy. But if you're more adventurous in your movie tastes and you're interested in obscure Canadian movies, it was nicely made. Well done. I was impressed. Huh. And it's nice and short. I like movies that are shorter than 90 minutes.
Yeah, that's about all I can handle now. All I can handle.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what? The relatives that I had in town the other day had their daughter, my niece. I was saying she had this celebrity, and I can't remember who it was. I didn't know the person, but I said, "Well, is there any other celebrities she's ever had in her waiting career?" And she said, "Well, the Prime Minister of Canada, Stephen Harper, which is the person you're talking about, at a restaurant, came in, and they had officers in the kitchen supervising the chefs, and the chefs had to wear gloves, and there was a big, detail. I didn't think there was much of a detail. It was I didn't think they did that with Canada. Watch the food preparation.
Yeah, well, it was a really funny story. If you want to listen to him tell the story of how he photobombed the Prime Minister, like I say, it's on a podcast called High School Sucked. It's a very recent episode, and it's a real comedy of errors. Like you would think, like this is never going to work. Like they're putting on waiter outfits that they got from Value Village. This is never going to work. And he totally worked and he got on stage with the Prime Minister.
And by the way, the Prime Minister had chosen in Calgary to eat at Tony Roma's, how would you describe that? A franchise steakhouse, kind of.
Yeah, something like that.
Not something you associate with prime ministers, but anyway, coming up later in the show, it's the lightning round. And that's where we clean up the headlines every week and go through them very quickly. But right now, I think it's time for What Do You Think?
What do you think?
This is the segment every week, a relatively new segment here on the show where I ask Brian what he thinks of topics that I have yet to form an opinion on or don't understand because of my intellectual handicap and the fact that I hit my head riding my bike last summer. So, various things. I'm sure I was dropped as a baby as well, at least once. Brian, Hyundai says the Ioniq 5 will dominate Tesla on miles per minute of charging. True? And if so, is that important?
Well, it seems comparable. So, yeah, I wanted to talk about the Ioniq 5 this week because there have been some out in the wild. Norway is often the first country to get these cars. So the Hyundai Ioniq 5 has been released in Norway. And there's a YouTuber named Bjorn who is driving one around. And, yeah, it absolutely rivals Tesla in terms of charging speed. It is maybe not, I've got the chart he's got here. It's not the absolute fastest. So Bjorn on his YouTube channel, he likes to do the 1,000-kilometer challenge.
Right.
Where he drives 1,000 kilometers. And the nice thing about Norway, they also have excellent charging infrastructure. So like one of the problems with non-Tesla cars is, especially around here, like, the charging infrastructure is quite poor. But in Norway, they have excellent third-party charging infrastructure that's as fast or faster than the Tesla chargers. So he can do a pretty fair test of all the various brands of cars. So, he did the 1,000-kilometer challenge, and it came out basically the same time as a Tesla Model 3 Standard Range Plus, but it took a longer time than some of the other Tesla models, like the long range Model 3 took a shorter time. But it basically impressive. It charges fast. It's got decent range. I think we don't know what the price is going to be in Canada or in the US. That's really the only question mark at this point. I fear it'll be kind of too much money, but we'll see.
They are looking expensive, and but boy, the reviews are really good. People like the styling. It's unconventional, the styling. Toyota tried that with their Prii recently, to negative reviews, and but Ioniq is coming out with something that looks different, that stands out, but is nice looking and innovative looking, and not nothing to be embarrassed about. Like it's a great looking car. I love the recliner seats where the little leg pad comes up like a recliner, like a lazy boy.
Yep.
I can see myself doing that. They're probably not safe at highway speeds, but very interesting car, and that is the problem with it. Good size too. It's a crossover of a decent size. So
I'd call it a large hatchback. I don't know if it would qualify as a crossover. It really just more looks like, it kind of looks like a small hatchback, but it's deceiving. It's actually much, much bigger than, like it sort of looks like an old, Honda Civic or something, but it's way, way bigger than that.
It's taller. It's got bigger wheels, a bigger ground clearance, and I think it's comparable to the ID4, which is marketed as a crossover. It's comparable to the Ford Mustang. The Mustang. What do they call it? The Mach-E, which is a crossover, supposedly. So they're good size. They're comfortable to sit in. They have a little bit of cargo room if you need it. So listen, there's a headline here, Brian, that says Tesla opening the supercharger network will enable access to a new $7.5 billion EV funding in the U.S. So because they are, I guess what they're saying is because they're partnering and opening it to everybody, they now eligible for that funding. Do you think that's what motivated them?
Yeah, that probably helped sort of move that along. I mean, I think they were kind of planning to do it anyway, but you'll know that here in Canada, there's, again, for the last year or so, there's been government subsidies to build new charging stations. So what they've had to do in Canada with the ones some of them are going up nearby here, like one in North Battleford, where I was born.
Is there a
they're having to put in they're having to put in like 6 Tesla branded chargers, and then they're putting in 4 non-Tesla branded chargers. And they're doing that because, to qualify for the subsidy we have to build charging stations, you can't just limit yourself to one manufacturer. But in the future, once it's open to everybody just using the app, then they could have just built 10 Tesla chargers and not have had to muck around with these other third-party brands.
Was that good or bad? I mean, it's helping them. It'll save them money. It's kind of nice that everything's kind of together. You see a charging sign and you could just go there regardless of what car you have.
Yeah, I think it's fine. It's just easier and simpler, and I trust Tesla to work it out through the app. So, it's super easy to charge with a Tesla. It'll be slightly more difficult to charge with another brand of car, but charging easily and quickly is one of the things that Tesla figured out years and years ago. So it's good.
Okay, Hyundai has announced a new all-in-one subscription service in the United Kingdom, specifically dedicated to its battery electric vehicles, PHEVs, that is plug-in hybrid electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles. They're calling it the Mocean. I don't know how you pronounce that. Mocean. This new subscription service allows approved customers to have an EV delivered to them for a monthly fee that includes insurance, maintenance, road tax, and repairs. And this is a business model they tried experimenting with in other countries before trying it out in the UK. But this is the first time they've done it with just fuel-efficient, clean, green vehicles only. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I've heard of these subscription services before. I think Volvo was doing it in the U.S. So yeah, it's kind of like similar to there are cell phone plans like this, right? Where you you pay a certain amount each month, and then every year, every 2 years, you just get to automatically upgrade your phone. So it's, I think it's got potential.
Brian, I think we have a little bit of breaking news, if you don't mind. You know what? Tony Seba's think tank, ReThinkX, has today released a new report called Rethinking Climate Change. This happened an hour before showtime, so I haven't had a chance to read the whole thing. I've skimmed some of the important parts. Rethinking Climate Change, How Humanity Can Choose to Reduce Emissions by 90% by 2035 through the disruption of energy, transportation, and food with existing technologies. That's a pretty big statement there. 90% by 2035 through existing technologies if we embrace them. The greatest barrier to, they've released a few reports, and a lot of their stuff talks about stuff that would affect climate change, but they rarely talk about climate change. In fact, I wasn't even sure what their view on it was. This specifically talks about everything they've talked about in the past. We've talked about food disruption, about locally produced fake foods now, or on the horizon, and they will eventually be cheaper than, My son works at a grocery store, and he came home with a steak the other day. And we don't eat steak in our house. It's just not a steak family. And we did go to the keg for his graduation. He had a steak, and the kids had tried steaks. And I like it, and I wasn't even convinced that they liked it. Well, he came home with a $2 steak. And he said that, look what I got. I got a $2 steak. So he cooked it. He doesn't cook, but he cooked it. And then now he's buying steaks every day. He bought a $4 steak yesterday. And I ordered him on Amazon some keg steak spice. And I thought it was like a little spice container that you would have in your spice cupboard. Well, it was 1.1 kilograms, and they probably had to send it by ground transportation and not by air because it was that big. Although I think you do put a lot of spices on steaks. You overspice and they don't all get in there. But
and this somehow relates to Tony Seba.
It somehow relates to Tony Seba because they're going to make fake steaks.
Yeah,
I learned a lot about steaks recently. There's only so many steaks that come from one cow, and that cow farts and burps and creates a lot of climate pollution, and you need a lot of land for the cow. And what Tony Seba has said, and if you listen to our past shows, he's talking about this disruption that's coming through fermentation, which is basically similar to what a microbrewery might do, and they'll be able to make textured chicken and textured steak. They'll be able to do this less than real steak. It'll be safer. It'll be more customizable. It'll be more consistent. And the important part, the disruptive part, is that it is going to be cheaper eventually. So this is one of the aspects, along with transportation and energy, and that's going to be disrupted through what he sees in his other reports. Now he's applying it to climate change.
Yeah, and if I can say, he doesn't normally mention climate change because I think what he said in the past is it's kind of not the most important aspect. Like, electric cars are going to take over, and yes, it's better for the planet, but they're going to take over because they're going to be better and cheaper. And, same thing with solar and wind and batteries. Yes, that's better for the planet, but they're going to take over because it's cheaper and better.
And it doesn't matter. If climate change went away tomorrow,
you would still do it.
This progress is still going to happen. The disruption is still going to happen because of economics. Very simple. It's not complicated. If one thing is 10 times cheaper than the other thing, you're not going to buy the 10 times more expensive thing if it's all things are equal. Okay? Very simple. Especially if you're a business. You're not going to throw away money and you won't be able to compete. You'll go out of business if you don't compete with other people. So he has two scenarios, the be sensible scenario and the get serious scenario. I'll just talk a little bit about the be sensible scenario. This is two scenarios that he sees us getting, as humanity, doing. So he thinks that net global emissions decline by over 90% by 2035 as a result of a combination of direct mitigation from the three disruptions plus offsets from passive forest reforestation. Passive forest reforestation, I looked it up. Are you familiar with that term at all?
No.
Well, it's if you got a forest and you've encroached on it, and you stop encroaching on it, you back away, the forest will expand. Little animals will carry seeds, birds will poop out seeds, and the forest will expand on its own if the thing is right. So that's not doing anything. The act of reforestation means planting the trees, which is labor intensive and may or may not work because of whether it's, the weather is right. Happens naturally, passive reforestation rather. The disruption of energy and transportation and food directly mitigates 40% of global emissions by 2030, and over 70% by 2035, and 80% by 2040. The 2.7 billion hectares of land freed up from animal agriculture by the food disruption, I was just talking about this, by not using animals for food, but creating fake animal food, with the fraction of the emissions and fraction of the price, or at least a competitive, disruptive price, offsets almost 10% of global emissions annually by 2030. This is pretty significant stuff. 20% by 2035 through the natural and costless recovery process of natural or passive reforestation. This is just the tip of the iceberg. You can read this, ReThinkX.org. You can read the report. It's in PDF form. It's free. And I'm sure Tony will be doing interviews in the coming weeks about this, and we'll have some clips on future shows, Brian, I'm sure. And so there's no reliance on non-market emission offsets. It's not, what he's saying is you don't need government support for this, which is, going to make everybody happy, right?
Yeah, the only thing I would prefer is if subsidies for fossil fuels went away. That would be nice.
Holy crap, would that be nice. And I say that as my fossil fuel brother-in-law arrives tomorrow. Hopefully he's not listening to this, but you look at the numbers of the trillions of dollars that we are spending on fossil fuel subsidies, and it's I can live with creating jobs for cleaning up wells. I can live with that as a welfare program, but I don't know.
Okay, have you got the clean energy pet peeve theme song standing by?
I believe I do, Brian.
Clean energy pet peeve.
So this is actually your pet peeve, but I'm going to steal it from you. You've often said that the energy industry, like whenever the media refers to the energy industry, they're really talking about oil and gas. And that's a weird thing. And you've mentioned that many times before, because of course you can get energy from solar and wind. So yeah, the pet peeve for me, because of course we live in oil countries, so we're in the midst of the backlash against, trying to shut down fossil fuels. But, my clean energy pet peeve is that it's all energy. Like the need for energy is not going anywhere. So if you're in the energy industry, you're fine. You just have to switch that to the cleaner side of the energy industry. It doesn't just mean oil and gas, although everybody thinks that. It's, the need for energy is going to increase like a lot in the next few years. And so if, anybody in the energy, quote unquote, industry is complaining about, these jobs going away, they're just, clearly not thinking about it in the correct way.
Yeah, it pisses me off, Brian, because we live in Canada, an oil-rich country, and oil a big part of our economy. And we'll often hear news stories say that the energy industry in Canada is responsible for this much. And you dig deeper into other headlines, you'll find out that there's actually more jobs in clean energy already.
Yeah, already.
They're not getting rich, these people in clean energy. Some of them are, some of them are not. There's a lot of money to be made in oil. A lot of people benefit very well. They've done well. But as the number of jobs is now already, and we haven't even begun surpassing fossil fuel jobs. Actually, fossil fuel jobs are becoming less because they've become more efficient because they've needed to make money as oil prices have dropped in the last decade. So we'll see how that goes.
We only need more energy going forward.
Brian Stockton. We only need more energy going forward. So, Brian, you wanted to talk about a new factory being built in Indonesia. What's up with that?
Yeah, so Indonesia is one of the world's biggest players in nickel mining. And of course, nickel is going to be one of the major components in batteries as we go forward in the clean energy transition. So Hyundai and LG have partnered to make a $1.1 billion investment in an Indonesian battery plant. So this is a big deal. Indonesia has been courting lots of players. There's been talk of maybe Tesla moving into Indonesia, but they just don't want to be the world's exporter of nickel. They want the jobs. They want the factory in Indonesia. So this is a big, big major announcement. 1.1 billion, Hyundai and LG, and they're going to make a battery plant in Indonesia, make use of all that nickel, and create some jobs for people in Indonesia.
I just wanted to say as an aside, CATL, the battery maker, announced that they had a breakthrough in non-lithium-ion batteries, right? This last week. We haven't talked about that.
Yeah, sodium or something.
It's sodium ion. It's the same as every other problem with batteries. There's always one thing that doesn't work. It doesn't work in cold temperatures. Everything works, but it doesn't work.
It's all a trade-off.
Or it doesn't charge fast, or it doesn't have a lot of recycle, it only lasts for 100 charges instead of 1,000. There's always something, or it gets too hot, or it doesn't charge fast. You have to have all these things come together for a useful battery. They say this is the world's biggest battery maker, a little bit bigger than LG Chemistry. We hear battery breakthrough stories all the time, and they're like, a minor university in Uganda. Some guy says they have it, give us money, we'll invest, and GM throws $1 million at them. And, there's been lots of investments by car companies in some of these, and some of them haven't panned out or they're a long way off. This is the biggest battery maker, so I believe them. Am I right to believe them?
You are correct.
So they are talking about $43 per kilowatt hour. And remember, the target was $100 per kilowatt hour to be parity with ICE vehicles, right?
Yeah.
So they're talking about almost half of what the trajectory is for lithium-ion right now. And they said they solved it. In fact, there's a benefit here that you and I will be interested in. It works better. At minus 20 degrees Celsius, you would expect a big hit on your battery, right? Well, they're talking about 10%. That's not bad. I can live with that. I mean, that's what you would expect on a gas car for various reasons, including, and I've gone over them many times before, they changed the chemistry in the gasoline. They have to add, antifreeze, and it doesn't combust as well, and there's different reasons.
Yeah, you lose something like 7% just for that.
So there's a lot going on in your range. You just don't notice it because you have so much in an ICE car. So that's a big story, and it's hard to tell because they come and go, and the internet doesn't explode, but that seems like it's important. And the energy density, I think that's one of the weaknesses of it, is the energy density isn't great. It's not quite as good as a lithium-ion battery. But still, because it works so well, you could still fit all that into it has about the same energy density as the cheap batteries that Tesla's using in China for their shorter range models. They'll use a cheaper chemistry there, and it'll fill up the whole battery compartment, whereas they have higher density ones for the longer range models.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
You wanted to talk about Tidal Turbines.
Yeah, so this is like a wind turbine, but it goes under the water in the ocean, and it spins with the tides. The tide comes in, the tide goes out. You can spin these turbines and generate electricity. So the world's most powerful tidal turbine is now generating power. It's a 2 megawatt system that's near Orkney, Scotland. And so this is enough energy for about 2,000 homes. And it's one of those things where, if it was up to me, I'm like, well, why don't you just put up more solar panels and more wind turbines and maybe some batteries? This seems awfully complicated. But it's still like super cool technology. There's sort of this floating submarine shaped kind of thing. And then there are these two big turbine blades that come off the sides of it. It's very kind of, it's like a Starship Enterprise, but upside down. And the two, arms are holding these giant turbines. So, enough power for 2,000 homes. That's nothing to sneeze at.
And I guess the interesting thing about it is that it's, for the most part, a base load. It's probably stronger at sometimes than others, but generally it's a base load, which is, any green base load is always great. Yeah,
there's a certain point when it has to shift from an incoming tide to an outgoing tide. So I imagine there's a bit of downtime when it switches. But you're right. This is kind of energy that's always there.
Like geothermal or nuclear, and it's the anniversary of. I watched a report on how they were wanting to show that the Fukushima area was back and in business again. Boy, what a reminder of how horrible that was. Because the Olympics were going to feature that, but because of the pandemic, they're not. Listen, Brian, we've got a lovely message here from a fellow named Bob Armstrong in Swift Current, Saskatchewan, Canada. He lives, looks like he's out in the country. He sent us a picture. Isn't that ever nice? It's like somebody getting a postcard from somebody. Sent us a picture of the sun setting over the hills with his rack-mounted solar panels in his yard and power lines in the background where the sun is setting. And he says, taken near Swift Current, unfortunately the power poles in the background go to our new natural gas electric generation plant, which I'm not happy about.
Yeah, they built that recently, I think, too, which is very sad.
It's very sad and very unnecessary and very not forward-looking. And so he says, I was wishing it was connected to the solar production plant instead, but it's not. So take care. Love the show, Bob Armstrong. Bob, thanks very much for that picture. It's very nice of you. Man, we like hearing from our listeners. Brian, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com, or on the Twitter, Clean Energy Pod, and on TikTok, where, people go.
Apparently.
For some reason.
We got to go there more often and get famous.
Right. Well, I do better there on when I post clips from the show. I do better there than they do on YouTube. So the algorithm picks it up. I think we got a crazier algorithm there.
Yes, and I want to plug my own Twitter as well. We each have our own personal Twitter. So mine is Brian Stockton, and yours is J.E. Whittingham, right?
Right. I couldn't get J. Whittingham, but J.E. Whittingham. So, and Brian Stockton. Follow us on Twitter. Follow the Clean Energy Show.
Before we get to the lightning round, I think we teased the Nikola story off the top. So Trevor Milton, the founder of Nikola Motors, which is a big electric vehicle startup, has been arrested and charged with fraud. This has been big news in the electric vehicle world. Nikola made a lot of claims about what they were doing, and lots of people were suspicious, including myself. And it turns out they did things like build a prototype semi-truck and then just rolled it down a hill and shot video of it and put it in their promos. And so the truth was stretched enough to end up in charges. So we'll see where this goes. Nikola still hasn't actually made any products. The company was one of the big startups on the stock exchange through a SPAC. Got onto the stock exchange, but I don't know. Things look dicey for Nikola Motors, and including fraud charges, which is quite a big deal.
They say that it... My son just texted me and said, I'll be cooking steak tonight, so update. Hopefully he uses some of that spice. We saw a story on the national news here in Canada about it, and my wife said, did you know about that? And damn right I did. I've got a podcast, man. Don't you know what I do every day? Don't you know my interests? I was happy. Like most people were like, this is before the Tesla electric truck. Wouldn't it be great if we had electric transport trucks, semi-trailers on the road, because that uses a lot of the fuel, a lot of the emissions. And wouldn't that be great? Oh, wow. They're going to do this. They're going to build hydrogen stations across the country. And they said they can do this. They're partnering with another company that has retail locations, and they're going to service the trucks. It's all going to be great. They originally, what made me initially suspicious, and I'll ask you when you got suspicious, but what was initially make me raise my eyebrow was they were going to do it by natural gas turbine. originally, and then they switched to hydrogen. So a natural gas turbine is kind of like a peaker plant, except on a truck. So you fire this by natural gas, and you generate electricity, and it's cleaner than diesel, but noisy and unpleasant, and not terribly breakthrough-ish green. But then they switched to hydrogen. Now, when did you get suspicious?
I wasn't really paying that much attention, frankly. I just got suspicious really when other people got suspicious, and suddenly it became a topic in the kind of electric car community that all this looked hinky.
Yeah. I love that word. I was following the CEO on Twitter, and, like I do, I follow different people, and I want to hear what's going on and hear the updates, and was looking forward to how they were progressing. And then Tesla had the Tesla Semi event, and they revealed the Semi and the specs. And their CEO, the guy who's going to jail, was like a petty child on Twitter. I couldn't believe it. And they got reported by some of the clean energy blogs as well, like Electric. He was going ballistic and saying, no, this can't be happening. You're defying physics and blah, blah, blah. And it was just so unprofessional and weird that I unfollowed him, and I thought, okay, well, good luck. Now I don't know what you're going to do, because he was going to come up with electric pickup trucks and everything. They were going to come up with different products, right?
I think
he even showed off an all-terrain vehicle.
I think unprofessional and weird is probably what his Twitter bio should be.
Well, I guess all the signs were there. He had problems everywhere he went in his life with other companies. And anybody who wanted to invest should have done their due diligence. But apparently people don't do their due diligence these days.
We've got one more story we teased off the top, which was Tesla's AI Day.
All right.
So nothing too much to say about it, but Tesla's AI Day is coming on August 19th. We'll talk about it a lot after it happens. They've been teasing a possible partnership with UCLA University for research, so we'll learn more about that. But Tesla AI Day, it's going to be much like Battery Day or Autonomy Day. They use these as a recruiting tool more than anything because they need lots of people. They need lots of top software engineers and engineers in general, and they're trying to recruit. So what typically happens at one of these Tesla events is it's quite a big deal. All the Tesla nerds get very excited, and then usually the stock goes down because it's too confusing for the kind of mainstream press to understand. The mainstream stock market doesn't understand it. It's, these are kind of long-term goals, what these events are about. So, I'll be curious to see if the stock goes down, but I'm very, very interested to hear what they have to say at AI Day. Of course, artificial intelligence, self-driving cars, this is a big part of the solution for clean energy because it could just mean fewer vehicles on the road, with things like self-driving robotaxis.
Well, how is this different than full self-driving day? Because they had a self-driving day, too, a couple of years ago.
Yeah, well, the rumor is that, Tesla's really going to expand their reach into artificial intelligence. So they've been trying to solve full self-driving, which is a huge problem. They're doing it purely with vision. They're doing it with cameras. They're doing it with data from 1 million or so Tesla vehicles that are on the road. So it sounds like they've learned a lot trying to do that. They're having to solve a lot of what's called general AI, general artificial intelligence, by getting a car to drive itself. So once they have that as the backbone, Tesla could potentially expand into other areas of artificial intelligence. They've also talked about building a new supercomputer called Dojo, which will be like an artificial intelligence training computer. So we're going to learn more about that.
Now, okay, they've hinted at things that they said it's going to be not just electric cars. So they've shown like a teaser on the invite of this artificially intelligent snake, which plugs itself into your Tesla, finds the hole and plugs it in so you don't have to. They've had that around for a long time. Hasn't happened yet. Be cool if it does. What do you think? Is there potential there for that over, say, wireless charging?
I think that's eventually the goal. Like, if there are a bunch of robotaxis on the road, there's going to need to be somebody at the Tesla charging station to physically plug the cars in. So that's something they'll want to fix eventually with a robot.
Yeah, and wireless charging isn't efficient because you do lose some in the transfer through heat and whatnot, and you have to have a heavier vehicle and it's more expensive. So if you could have a robotic, artificially intelligent snake find its way into your charge port instead of, that, then it's better. So I'm looking forward to it.
And just imagine if you do have a car that can successfully navigate city streets, which they almost can do now, not quite, but they're on the way to solving that. Just imagine what that knowledge is worth. And then eventually you'll have humanoid type robots that'll be able to walk the streets and kind of navigate in the same way. It's the potential by 2030, the end date for our podcast is enormous.
Now, I listened to Tesla Daily's interview with this AI guy, AI expert. Did you listen to that? It was a two-parter.
Part of it, yeah.
I have to feel like I don't quite know for sure what to think on how things are going, but he's really convinced that we're a year and a half, 2 years away from Tesla, A, winning the race by far, and B, it coming that fast. So huge things are coming.
Yeah, it's apparently an exponential progression, so it should go quickly, but, who knows?
Okay, here's the lightning round.
The Clean Energy Show Lightning Round.
The Ford Mustang Mach-E, and we're out of time here, so I have to be fast. We have to live up to the lightning name here, Brian. The Ford Mustang Mach-E was Norway's best-selling car, as EVs make up only 64% of car sales in July. It's been higher there, but the Mach-E is number one now. So are you surprised by that?
Not really. It's a new model, and that's what tends to happen in Norway is whatever the kind of hot new car is tends to move to number one. Like maybe next it'll be the Hyundai Ioniq 5. So yeah, I'm not particularly surprised.
Now here's a train of thought, a school of thought rather, that I've heard discussed a lot lately. That is in places like California and Norway where you can't swing a cat without hitting a Tesla. It's like people don't want Teslas anymore. Everybody's got Teslas. You don't want the same car that everybody else has. No matter how much you like it, it's like, do I want to be like this? So other models have to come in, and Tesla can't put out that many models. They don't even have that many colors. So what do you think of that?
Well, and as we discussed earlier in the show, Norway's got the charging infrastructure. Like where we live, it's, in North America particularly, Tesla just has a huge advantage with their charging network. And but in Norway, there's chargers everywhere. They're in all the McDonald's parking lots, and they're good ones too. They're super fast. They're not, there's probably a few early generation ones, but they're as fast or faster than the Tesla chargers.
The UK Prime Minister's climate spokesperson has range anxiety, so she drives a diesel VW. A third-hand diesel Golf because she has range anxiety, and she's the climate spokesperson. Coming under criticism there. No comment from you?
Well, it's obviously unfortunate, but you and I talk about electric vehicles, at least once a week, but typically all day long. So we understand the range issues, but most people don't. Now, this is somebody, it's in their portfolio, so they really should understand it better. But, normal humans still don't get this stuff.
They don't. I looked at some of the comments on my tweets once they go viral, once other people start spreading them around. You say people don't follow me, start commenting. It's like... saw a comment this morning like, have you seen the prices of EVs? Well, I have a podcast, fairly well versed in it. Kind of an obsession of mine. So yes. And then, how will I charge when I go to visit my daughter? Where do you start? At a plug-in.
Yeah.
I guess at a gas station. At my son's grocery store has chargers and nobody uses them. They actually have chargers at the co-op.
But, it's not ubiquitous. Once they're as common as gas stations, people will start to get it more.
Ford plans to spend more on EVs than internal combustion engines by 2023.
Good, I guess.
And it makes sense.
They're going to have to.
They're going to have to because if you don't want to waste too much time developing internal combustion engines, and I think that's going to be true across the board. I think that they're going to see the light. They're going to see the trajectory. Even freaking idiot Toyota, which are running constant ads showing how electrified they are, and they're not. And they're fighting government. They don't want governments around the world to mandate just EVs by 2030, 35. They're against that, which really makes me want to change brands, which is too bad. But they're because they invented the Prius. In 97, they had the most advanced car. They had this reputation.
You just need to switch brands and not take it so personally.
Okay, I will. I just need to find a car. Brian. The time is ticking. I've got 8 months. Ford plans to spend more than that by 2023. That's only 2 years away. I think, like I said, it'll go across the board, and everybody will just drop funding for new combustion engines. So, it's the tipping point is what I'm saying. It's the tipping point is coming, and everything's going to fall off a cliff. So there's a rumor that Tesla China already built its first $25,000 compact EV prototype. Do you buy into this? Like, it's apparently a reliable source.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the prototype already exists. But of course, it's going to be such a mass market vehicle that the ramp up to production is just going to be a major thing, including probably building an entirely new factory. So, this isn't coming anytime quickly, but it does make sense. The prototype could be finished by now.
What they're planning on doing is building it in China for the world. Remember that the automotive consultant, what's his name? I've forgotten his name. Damn it. He's been taking apart Teslas.
The guy who takes apart Teslas.
The guy who takes apart Teslas and everything else, and now has a YouTube channel and is all EVs. He said that they could save 20% by building in China.
Sandy Munro,
yes. Sorry, Sandy Munro. I know he listens to the show every week.
Yeah, big fan.
By the way, we were looking at our podcast charts this week, Brian, and we are amazed to see that we are, what were we, top 20 in where? In India?
Top 20 in India and as high as number 9 in Saudi Arabia.
As high as number 9 in Saudi Arabia. So if you're listening...
here we were, excited that we had a single listener in Australia.
Yeah, screw you,
Australia.
Obviously, we're not going to cater to you. We're going to cater to Saudi Arabia and India from now on. Hello, India. Hello, Saudi Arabia. In our category. So, hello, people. We love you for listening. Thank you. Send us a note. We love notes.
Please.
Send us a hello. Follow us on Twitter. And keep listening. Tell your friends. So... I don't know. So they're going to build this. It could be 20% cheaper, Sandy Munro said, and put it around the world, which I'd be happy with. I'd be okay with it built in China if I could save. What do you think this car would look like, Brian?
Well, probably a small hatchback. That's the most kind of versatile and economical. It's the form factor that would be popular in China, would be popular in Europe, maybe less so in North America. But robo-taxis are a potentially big part of that car. So... that's probably the way to go.
Here's a headline from India. Tesla and Indian politicians are not seeing eye to eye on possible import duty reductions for Tesla, because Tesla is looking to open up operations there, not with the factory right off the bat, but with just testing the market and getting established there. So that's interesting. Tesla to make its first Texas-built Model Y next week, 1 month ahead of Giga Berlin. Are you surprised at Texas? I think there's been so many hurdles in Berlin, hasn't there?
Yeah, Berlin and Texas, they're both huge factories. But we're starting to see photos from inside the factories, and the outside still doesn't look finished, but the inside is starting to look finished. Of course, it's always like full speed ahead with Tesla. Everything Elon Musk likes to do, he likes to do very, very fast. So, there should be a few Model Ys trickling out of Texas by the end of the year and, possibly Berlin. We'll see.
Far from a flop, Tesla Cybertruck orders are surpassing 1.2 million. Take one off that because one of those orders is mine, and there's no way. Things just have not panned out. I've not won the lottery. My trees are not producing cash in the backyard. Well,
we might have to start a Patreon for the podcast so that you can afford a Cybertruck.
For a Patreon membership of $5 a month, get a ride every 6 weeks in James's Cybertruck. That'll be one of the benefits. Except you people in India. I can't afford airline tickets for you to come here. I can't. I mean, I'd like to. For a Patreon subscription of $1,000 a month, I'll bring you here every 2 months. How about that? Tesla's lithium supply is delayed because North Carolina project falls behind schedule. There continues to be problems. Yeah. And like I said earlier, Rivian is in negotiations for a UK factory. It's first outside the US. Pretty interesting. Since you don't associate pickup trucks with the UK. They don't do pickup trucks over there, but they maybe have delivery trucks or God knows
they
what.
do like things like the Range Rover are, it's an old British brand that's popular there. So it's not unheard of.
More battery energy storage capacity will be installed in the United States this year than even existed in 2020. That, I'm looking at the graph. It's stark. It's stark, Brian. It's very stark.
That's amazing. And Tesla's massive production of batteries isn't even online yet.
Yeah. By the way, the C8TL sodium-ion battery, for you technical people out there, is 160 watts per kilogram energy density.
Which is so-so.
So-so, but because of the cost, crazy. And you start talking about grid storage and other uses and home storage, things become very disruptive. Things are panning out. This decade will be incredibly disruptive, and this is what we've known since our first show many shows ago. Brian, we're out of time, and long out of time. So it's been great talking to you this week, and we'll be back next week with another edition of the Clean Energy Show when we have a conversation about the latest.
See you next week.